You know, as the gubernatorial campaign has begun, we've heard talk about a lot of issues and concerns of voters in upstate New York, and warnings that upstate is actually a lot more conservative, more Republican than the rest of the state. We know this, and we know that's true. All you have to do is look at the state's House delegation or representation in Albany. But left me wondering just how deep those issues really run and how big the division really is. And, you know, you take an issue like fracking. We know it's far more popular upstate, especially in the areas where any fracking would be likely to happen. It's very popular downstate and unpopular in the whole when you look at the entire state polling. And, you know, Scott, I've always considered Rockland County to be something of a microcosm of the state. You've got the city influences, the suburban influences, then as you go further north and further west, it feels more like you're getting away from the city. And you know, Mike, you've worked with Senator Schumer, so you've had to represent the interests of the entire state. I'm just curious, how stark a division is it? We hear about Pennsylvania being Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and sort of Alabama in between is how that old saw goes. How deep is the division, do you think?
Well, in the areas where fracking could be done, it's pretty substantial because those areas mostly have high employment. They have property taxes that are hurting. They've got people leaving. You know, Steuben County, particularly Steuben, all the way down. Mm-hmm. And their issues of fracking are important because it could mean jobs, it could mean a resurgence for them of economic development. So it's important. Is it important enough to vote against the governor? After all, the governor's not taken a position, he simply is taking no position. I'm not sure. I think the gun issue probably plays better in some cases because a lot of upstate, you know, they're hunters, they use it for sports and what have you. I think that issue may resonate more throughout the state. But the fracking thing is important. One of the problems with fracking is a lot of New York City folks feel that everything upstate is their water supply, and therefore there can't be any of that. Well, most of the fracking discussions haven't been and aren't going to be around the water supply for New York City. And so there's there is a true New York City versus upstate conflict on this, and I don't think it's necessarily true. It should be.
Though you could make the argument, I mean, if it's anybody's water supply, really, that's still an area for concern. But I'm just curious, because obviously Senator Schumer has been able to win statewide office multiple times. We haven't had a statewide Republican elected since 2002. How delicate is that balance in a statewide campaign or for a statewide candidate?
It is a delicate balance. I mean, first, but let's think about population for a second and how races get decided in New York. You know, races are decided. You know where New York City is going to wind up, and races primarily get decided on Long Island, the lower Hudson Valley, and Buffalo. Now, that's not to say the rest of New York State is not important. Of course it is. But what you find is that primarily, whether you're in the southern tier, the North Country, or Long Island, people care about primarily two things, and it usually holds steady: jobs and taxes. And I think that what you're going to wind up seeing in the course of this campaign is that jobs take precedence over the significance of something like fracking to a statewide electorate is not. I don't think that's going to register as the top 3, top 5 reasons that anyone votes for either candidate.
But what about a set of social issues? I know that Cuomo's planning to ding Astorino on abortion and a series of other social issues. Is that the kind of thing that could register in the parts of the state that you say could be the swing areas, the Long Island,
Look, there's certainly, the suburbs are certainly moderate, if not moderate fiscally, and becoming, I suppose, more conservative fiscally, but certainly socially liberal. And I think that those are issues that do matter. If you're looking at a guy and you don't know much about him, and most folks won't know much about Rob Astorino, there are a couple things that people will learn very quickly about him. He's a fairly conservative Republican on social issues. He's conservative fiscally as well. But you know, on issues like gay marriage, I think less so than abortion. I think gay marriage has become one of those transcendent issues in which it doesn't matter whether you're a conservative or a liberal, you're black, you're white. Everyone in this day and age has a relative, a sister, a brother, a cousin, an uncle who is out of the closet. And the messaging and sort of discussion about whether you don't support equal rights for those folks, I think that does start to resonate with people in ways. I think people are sort of settled in on abortion insofar as respecting whether you agree with it or not agreeing with it, respecting your perspective about being anti-choice. I don't know that the same kind of comfort exists in it. I think it's changing, that it is okay not to be comfortable with equality. because I think that becomes much more of a civil rights issue than I think something like abortion does. So I think gay marriage is more of an important issue to suburban voters than I think a choice would be.
Scott, is that your sense too, that that's pretty well settled, but or at least more settled as an issue than, let's say, guns or abortion or another one of those issues that might split the electorate?
Yeah, certainly for the suburbs, I think Mike's right. And I think, fracking doesn't really have any real bearing here in those very important areas of Long Island, Rockland, Westchester, et cetera, as much as it does upstate. But the upstate fracking issue is a jobs issue. And that's why he'll be, Astorino will be smart to make sure he makes that a key part of his campaign. The other thing, of course, is that he will not want to be making a part of the conservative views, but the governor certainly will, I think, all over the state, particularly in the suburbs in New York City, go after Astorino on his social issue side.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. That's. I'm sure they already have stuff in the pipeline on that. All right, up next, Dominic catches up with former New York Governor David Paterson, and he takes on legislators that were thorns in his side.
Remember they had those three senators, what do they call themselves, the three amigos? And now they're known as the three inmates because they're all in prison.
It's one of those he who laughs last kind of moments. The governor looks back at his time in office and looks ahead to this year's gubernatorial race and more next.